Hi, my name is Ann Chin, and I was the victim of foreclosure fraud back in 2019. Um, Basically, in my case, the financial institutions that uh, were lending money were corrupting or had corrupted parts of our government, like the Federal Reserve, as Patrick Lovell lays out in his documentary, The Con, his docuseries. And so I will be going to Patrick Lovell's March on Corruption that's happening on November 1st, 2022, to protest this corruption at the Federal Reserve building. What happened in my case specifically was that back in 2005, my husband and I, with two toddlers, were looking for our first home. We both were working and we could afford a mortgage. But unfortunately, we were targeted, perhaps because my husband was a Canadian, I'm not sure, um, by predatory lenders, actually, not only predatory lending with a very high interest rate, but also asking for a larger down payment than initially was supposed to be had, plus they apparently was I found out later it was table funded. So the people that were lending us the money actually weren't the people that had put any money into it. And those people didn't want their names known because they were turning around and selling our loan multiple times to other investors. Um, and so they didn't want the liability of the predatory lending. So anyway, fast forward a couple of years, basically my husband and I had gotten a divorce. We're getting a divorce. Um, and a couple of years later, I couldn't pay the mortgage anymore. I had two kids, and um, but um, nothing happened for some reason. About that time, Occupy happened, and I found out that some of these foreclosures were not on the up and up. So I thought, well, maybe I have a chance of getting my home. Um, and in I had my children with me at my home, but then we got a foreclosure notice. So um, um, I had had my kids, my sisters in another state because I thought I was surely going to get foreclosed on before I found out about all this. So that was another whole side story to all of this, is that it caused a lot of stress in my family. Um, the whole thing, from the predatory loan and not being able to make the payments to the foreclosure itself, which lasted 6 years. So I got the foreclosure paperwork in 2013 from something called Deutsche Bank National Trust Company as trustee for, yada, 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 a loan trust, 2006, da, 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 da. Um, and I realized right away by looking at it that the assignment had been robo-signed because basically there were the telltale signs, and there'd already been the settlement agreements with the 49 states attorney generals, and the big financial institutions. So I started fighting. I was able to do some of it myself, but I finally did get an attorney. Um, and it took a few years for them to finally get it to go to trial. 2016, it went to trial, and I lost that, but I appealed. And basically, what was going on is I was so stressed out at the time, I wasn't able to actually, um, get the help I needed and to be able to cope with everything that was going on. So actually, I wasn't actually even represented properly at any of the proceedings. So basically, that was one way my due process violations were violated. I at the time was had a stress disorder, and I was supposed to have an advocate with me, but they wouldn't allow the time it took for me to get the advocate. They just went ahead and foreclosed. And then went on for a few years. It was very stressful, one of the most stressful times of my life, trying to work and also at night trying to research and trying to figure out how, what the laws were and how I could fight back. Ultimately, they foreclosed. I did appeal, um, and it took a few years to get through that. Um, and I did have a securitization title analysis done, which showed clearly that not only was the assignment fraudulent, but the endorsement was also fraudulent. And those were the two items that they relied on in their answer to me. They said it doesn't matter if we don't own the mortgage. We have the assignment and the endorsement. That's what their argument was back to me. Um, and uh, so I had that, but the judge would not hold a hearing about it, would not listen to that argument, and basically said it was too late. And so I appealed, but I was not able to stop them from foreclosing. And it turned out that when they foreclosed, they actually assigned the bid, which is another way of basically saying we're giving somebody else the right to own the property. Because this is sort of common procedure, but it's usually somebody else. In this case, what they did is they changed the wording slightly of the trust name, which the report, the securitization title analysis by Bill Padelow had shown was not actually a trust. It was actually did not have any right to what it was claiming in my property in foreclosure court. And so it basically, the loan supposedly, or my home basically ended up being supposedly owned by this other similar sounding trust, which I'm now in the process of considering whether I could sue the law firm um, regarding that created this fake trust, to see if I can get some justice. But um, anyway, in 2019, I actually was evicted from my home with my two children who had grown up by then. There were two teenagers who had to watch their mom being, evicted from our home. And we ended up homeless because where we were in Sarasota, Florida, there was no place to rent for people like us. There was nothing available, nothing that was affordable. And so, um, on my teacher's salary I was getting at the time. And so we ended up bouncing around from friend's house to friend's house, and even had to camp out sometimes, and it was just really horrible. Um, and then after that, I decided, okay, I should sue them. So I had to go through all the agony of another lawsuit, which I was representing myself in. I had some advice from some attorneys, however, but and this is not even talking about, I had several other lawsuits. I had rescinded my loan that went all the way to the final stage before the Supreme Court would possibly have heard it, using the Truth in Lending Act. I had done that. I'd also created a bankruptcy adversary action to try and fight back. So all of this was tremendously stressful. I can't not overstate how horrible it was to have to go through that. We need to stop this fraud closure machine. We need to all come together, get out there on the streets, make a lot of noise, and make our government wake up and do something. Thank you. I'll see you on November 1st.